Hello there, this is Rahul, and today we are going to talk about an interesting topic, that is authorization and how to manage authorization using the role-based access control. But before we talk more about the authorization, you must know the difference between the authentication and authorization. Let's take a very simple example to understand the authentication. There is a person who is knocking on the door. So once you open the door, you need to decide, would you allow that person to come into your house or not? So the deciding factor where you're thinking to allow that person to come into your house or not is going to be the authentication. So where does the authorization fits into that analogy? Taking the same example, now you have decided to let that person come into your house. Now, would you allow that user to use your kitchen? Or would you allow that user to use your toilet, or would you allow that user to use your bedroom? So all these things falls under the umbrella of authorization. And when you're talking about the authorization, that means you are authorizing that particular person to do a certain task. So why we are talking authorization too much? So if you talk about an enterprise level application where you have thousands or millions of users, so you cannot rely on a concept like you will have one admin user and one non-admin user. But having just an admin and non-admin user is not sufficient enough. You need to have a more complex system in place. There are various role-based access control, which stands for RBAC, as well as attribute-based access control, which stands for ABAC. But today let's discuss more on to RBAC, which is role-based access control. Considering the whole scenario, either what you can do, you can develop your own role-based access control system, which can get bloated with a lot of customization and the user requests. Or second option would be choose a platform which provide all these features out of the box. Today we are going to talk about a really good platform, that is permit.io, which helps you to manage authorization using the role-based access control. I'll put the link of the permit.io into the description section so you can go ahead and check their website. They have a really good documentation and the developer support available onto the Slack. Alright, so enough with the intro part. Today we are going to take an use case where we are going to use the permit.io to manage the authorization using the role-based access control. And for the today's use case, I'm going to take my own blog, that is JHook, and we are going to build a role-based access control system around this blog using the permit.io. So let's switch over to the desktop and start with our demo. To start with, go to permit.io, click on the start button over here in the top right side corner. And here you will find two options to get yourself registered with the permit.io, one with the Google and second one with the GitHub. I'll go ahead and register my account with the github.com, but in case if you have a Google account, then also you can register with your Google account. Let's click on the GitHub. As you can see, this is the default welcome page from permit.io after the successful sign up. And since I have already authorized the permit.io to access my GitHub account, that's why I have been redirected to this page. But in case if you are doing it for the first time, then it might ask to authorize the permit.io from your GitHub account. So this is the message you will get, and you need to click on this green button to authorize permit.io. And after that, you should be able to sign up with the permit.io. Alright, so I'm just gonna split the screen. On the left hand side, you will find permit.io, and on the right hand side, I have prepared this guide where I have documented all the steps which is needed for this demo. So I'll put the link of this guide into the description section so you can follow it later. Alright, so after the successful sign up, the next thing which we need to do, we need to create a workspace. And this is going to be the first level in your hierarchy. Click on this Let's Go option. And here it will ask for the workspace name. So just keep a suitable workspace name over here. So for example, I'm just gonna keep jhook.org, and the workspace key name, since I have already used the jhook.org, so I might use jhook test 3, let's say. And after that, you need to specify the company size. So I'm just gonna choose 1 to 49 since I'm just using this for the demo purpose. After that, click on the create workspace. Now, after creating the workspace, the next thing which we need to create is the resource. So here, I'm just gonna first type in the name of the resource. So I'm just gonna keep jhook blog. But let's assume that there are more than one person working on this blog. So what kind of actions that can be performed on this blog? So there is someone who can read the blog post, There is someone who can edit the blog post, who can approve it, who can delete it, and who can provide some copyright approval on this blog. So resource is something on which we can perform some kind of action. So the actions we are talking about is read, edit, approve, delete, and copy approval. So in the next step, after creating the resource, we are gonna create the action on top of the resource. But first, let's create the resource. Click on this create resource button. And after that, these are the default actions. So first of all, let's delete all of it. And after that, we can create the first action, that is read. Then second action, that is edit. Third, that is approve. Fourth, that is delete. And fifth, that is copy approval. Now click on create actions. After creating the actions, the next thing which we need to create is the role-based access control, which we call it as a RBAC. So here by default permit.io provides you the two roles, that is admin and the viewer. But since this is a JHook blog and here the main roles we are talking about is the admin, writer, reviewer, and the copywriter. Let's start by first of all removing the viewer role because that we don't need it. And then click on the first role, that is writer. You can write some description over here, can read and edit the post. Then click on create role. Create the next role, that is reviewer. And here you can write some description, can read, edit, and approve the post. Then click on create role. And after that, you can create the last role, that is copywriter. And here you can write some description, can read, edit, and provide copy approval. Then click on create role. After creating the roles, we need to map these roles to the action. So anyone who is writer can read the post and can edit the post. Similarly, if we go to the reviewer, then he can or she can read the post and approve the post as well as edit the post. And if we go about the copywriter, then anyone who is having that copywriter role can read the post, can provide the copy approval, and also can edit the post. After the mapping is done, you can click on the assign permission. One more thing, this is not a one-time setup. You can edit all these settings later on also. Till now, what we have done, we have created a workspace, we have created a resource, we have created the actions, and then we have created the roles, and then we have mapped those roles to the actions. In the next step, we need to create the users. So for this example purpose, I'm just going to use some dummy user, and I have created the three user. One is Superman, second is Batman, and the third one is the Wonder Woman. So here, this is just an example. So I'm just going to associate different role with the different users. And just to make the thing quick, I have already noted down all the email ID, first name, and the last name for my users. So let's start by admin. So first of all, I'm just gonna make myself admin. I'm just gonna enter my first name and the last name, and from here I can choose myself as an admin who has all the permissions. I will just fast forward this process and I will just copy all the values from a notepad to the user interface of permit.io. Okay, so that's been done. But now we need to map the roles also. So I am myself created, or I am myself assigned as an admin. The next thing for Superman, I'm just gonna make him a writer. Batman, I'm just gonna make him a reviewer. You can follow the same guide, or you can change the permission just to play around. And the last one, the Wonder Woman, I'm just gonna make her copywriter. Once you fill in the information of the users and you have mapped the roles correctly, then you simply click on assign user roles. And once you see this message, that means you have successfully signed up with the permit.io, and you have created the resource, you have created the actions, you have created the roles, and at last you have created the user. And now you're ready to play along with the permit.io SDK. The permit.io SDK supports one of the most popular languages like Node.js, Python, Java, and .NET. For today's demo, I'm just gonna play along with the Java. So I'm just gonna click with the Java, and I'm just gonna use their Java version of SDK. So once you scroll down, then you will find the instructions how you can start working with the permit.io SDK. So the first thing which you need to have a Docker installed onto your system. In case if you don't have a Docker installed onto your system, then click on this link, and from here you can find the suitable package based on your operating system to install the Docker. Moving further, now I am assuming that you have already installed Docker onto your working machine. The next thing which we need to do, we need to pull the latest Docker image of a permit.io. So here, this is the instructions for Docker pull image. So I'm just going to copy this command and head over to terminal. This is my terminal, and I'm just going to simply paste the command for Docker pull and hit enter. And I have already downloaded this Docker image. That's why it shows like this is already present. But in case if you are doing it for the first time, then it might take some time to download that latest image. After pulling the latest Docker image, the next thing which we're gonna do, we are just gonna run the Docker image. And the instructions for running the Docker image is provided over here into the initial setup guide. So simply copy these instructions and go to your notepad and paste it over here. Why I have copied this docker run command over here, because I just wanted to show you one important thing, that is PDP API key. This key will allow anyone to access your data, keep it safe, and I recommend using a proper vault. I'm just gonna head over to my terminal and I'm just gonna paste the docker run command which I copied from my initial setup guide over here and hit enter. And after that, you should see some log. That means your Docker container has just started. And now we will switch over to our Java SDK side, where we will write some Java program to communicate with our permit IO. Now the next question comes, like how we are gonna implement inside our Java application. So for that purpose, we are gonna use a Spring Boot application where we are going to implement some REST endpoint, which will be internally calling the permit IO SDK, and that all communication we will be using this PDP API key. So let's jump over to IntelliJ and I'll start creating my Spring Boot project. This is my IntelliJ and I'm just gonna create a new project, but before that I'm just gonna move it to the left hand side so we can follow the instructions. Click on this new project. And here on the left hand side, you need to click on the Spring Initializer because we are going to create a Spring Boot application. After that, I'm just gonna select the location. So let's assume that we are gonna create inside my document directory. Click OK. And after that, you need to mention the name of the project. So I'm just gonna put permit IO. And you are gonna use the Java, then we are gonna use the Gradle as my preferred build system, and after that we are just gonna mention the package or the group ID over here. And once you're done with that, also make sure that the packaging is jar because we are gonna create a jar file. Click on next. And here we need to select some dependencies. So we are gonna use Lombok, and then we are gonna use the Spring configuration processor. Then click on create. It might take a couple of minutes to start the project. So here you can see our basic skeleton project is ready, and it will download some initial dependencies which we have defined inside while the creation of our project. So now you can see our project structure is ready, and we will start writing our first Java code inside or using the permit DIO. Also, I'm just gonna share this project on a GitHub. So if you are interested into the Java SDK, so you can pretty much use this project from my GitHub and you can fork it and you can customize as per your need. So I'll drop the link of my GitHub repo into the description section. So you feel free to use this Java project. Coming back to the IntelliJ, so this is the Spring Boot application, and here I have copied the code from my GitHub repository just to speed up the things, but I'll explain the code one by one. So to start with the API key, and if you remember, we have used the PDP API key to start our Docker container. So we are just going to use the same PDP API key inside our Java SDK. So here I have defined the string variable for API key, and here inside the double quotes, I'm just going to paste the API key over here. Second thing, we need to define the PDP URL, and the port should be similar to the one where we have started our Docker container, because this Spring Boot application is going to communicate with our Docker container. So here you can find the local host, that is because we are running the Docker on locally, and the port is 7766. So if you go back to our notepad where we have copied the command, so here you can see this is the port 7766 and this is the API key. So you need to first of all place these things over here into the variables. One is API key variable and one is the PDP URL variable. Moving further, here I have defined 3 REST endpoints, one for edit, one for update, and one for delete. So we'll just go through one by one. So let's open the edit one over here. So here I am supplying the API key from this variable which I have declared over here. This is the PDP URL which I have declared over here, and the third thing which we need to do, we need to build a permit object over here. So you can simply build the permit object by providing these parameters: API key, PDP URL, and the debug mode true if you are using it for development mode. Next thing, we need to build the user object because we have created the user in our initial setup. So here the key attribute which we will be passing is the email ID. Then after that we will be passing the first name, the last name. Okay, so now we have the objects like a permit object for our permit IO. Then we have created a user object, and then we need to check the permissions. So here, this is the critical part of this whole SDK, because this is where we are just gonna communicate with our permit IO configuration, which we have did, if you remember, like our resources, roles, and our actions and the users. So here we are performing the check, and here we are passing the user object, and this user object will contain email ID, username, first name and the last name, along with the actions. So here we will be passing the action, and we will be validating this action against our setup which we have done initially. And this whole thing will be done on the resource, and that resource is going to be our JHook blog. So if you remember from our initial step, we have created this resource initially, and we have created the roles and the actions. So here we are passing this action. So we just wanted to verify that whether this user can perform this action on this resource or not. So this is the validation we are doing over here using the permit IO SDK. Let's start our application and verify our API. So here on the IntelliJ, I'm just gonna click on run Spring Boot application. So it will start my application, and this application will be available on a port 8080. So I'm just gonna open the Postman to verify my REST API. So this is the Postman, and the URL which I'll be using, or the REST API which I'll be using, is the post. So go to Postman and change the type to post over here. And since this Spring Boot application is running on a local host, that's why I'm just going to use the URL as a HTTP localhost. So I have written that URL over here. So here you can see HTTP localhost 8080. So I'm just going to copy this URL over here. And after that, we need to supply the parameters. So the parameters which is needed to communicate with this API is the first name, last name, and the email ID. So these are the three parameters we will be passing to use this API. So here, if you go back to Notepad, so here I have passed these parameters. So this is our first name, that is Bat. The second name is the main, and the email ID is the batman@jhook.com. So I'm just going to copy this email ID over here. Go to your Postman, paste the URL over here, and simply click on send button. And as you can see, the written message you have got is like you have a permission to edit the article. So let's go back to our initial setup, what we have done for Batman, and verify whether he can edit the article or not. And one thing which I have forgot to mention, as soon as you start communicating with your SDK of permit IO, then you will see a message over here. So here we have sent a first request that Batman JHook was permitted to edit JHook blog. So as soon as you start communicating with your API, then you will see this message onto your dashboard of permit IO. And also, this is just an example, but in reality, you should get the user identity from the authentication layer, not from the request. Let's go ahead and navigate to our dashboard. So here, I'm just gonna increase the size of this screen and go to your user management. And here you can see the permission of a Batman, that he is a reviewer. So once he is a reviewer, then he can view the article and he can edit the article. And what are the parameters we have passed? So we have passed the parameter, we have called the post API, and the post API is doing, it is just validating the edit. So that means it is validating whether a user can edit the article or not. And since the Batman the Batman user is a reviewer, so yes, he can edit the article. So that's why we have got the message like you have a permission to edit the article. So this is how you're gonna validate your REST API using the permit.io SDK. Considering the same example, let's verify some negative test case. So here we have verified user has the permission, and yes, user has the correct permission to edit the article. How about deleting the article? So I'm just going to change the post type to delete over here and just click on send. And here you can see you don't have a permission to delete. So let's go back to our dashboard of permit.io. And here Batman is a reviewer and he is not an admin. So that means Batman cannot delete the post. Only the admin user can delete that particular post. That's why he has got a message like you don't have a permission to delete the article. And this REST API which I have implemented over here, this delete role. So here I'm also doing the similar thing. I'm creating a permit object, I'm creating a user object, and but instead of action edit, I'm passing the delete over here, and I'm using the same resource. So that depends like what kind of a resource you are creating and what kind of actions you are passing with your permit.io. So that might differ in your use case. One more interesting thing about this permit.io SDK is that you can update the role on a real-time basis. So what I mean, so if you go back to our dashboard, so since the Batman has a reviewer role assigned to it, so instead of changing this role from the UI of permit.io, you can directly change this role from the our API also. So here I have created a REST endpoint for update role, and here I will be passing the email ID that is unique to that particular user along with the role. So once you pass this email ID along with the role and you call the permit API assign role function, then you will be able to update the role of that particular user. So remember, you need to pass email ID and the role. These are the two important things which you need to pass. And after that, you need to look for the tenant. If you have a multiple tenant setup, then you need to choose the correct tenant for that particular API. Otherwise, if you have a single tenant, then you can just go for the default one. Jumping back to my Postman, so I'm just going to create a new request. I'm just going to click over here and I'm just going to paste the URL. So I'll just go through the URL. Since I'm updating the object, I'm updating the role. So first of all, I'm just going to choose the post instead of get. Secondly, we need to change, make the URL that is localhost 8080 because that's where our application Spring Boot is running. Second, we need to use the update role API. So here I have used the update role. After that, you need to pass the parameter. So parameter we are using is the email ID, that is batman@jhum.com, and the role which we want to update, that is admin. So here I have prepared this URL and I'm just simply gonna click. And here you can see successfully updated the role to admin. And let's verify from the UI. So here, if you can see, I have not refreshed this page yet. So previous role was reviewer, and once I'll refresh it, then you will see a new admin role has been added over here. So as of now, the Batman is a reviewer as well as admin, but you can use the unassigned function of our permit.io SDK and you can remove the reviewer role because admin has all the privileges on the Batman user. But this is just an example. I just want to demonstrate you. That's why I have kept both the role. But in case if you are interested, then you can simply use this function like unassigned role, and you can pass the same email ID and the role and the tenant, and it will remove the roles which you don't want to associate with your user. Let's have a look on the web interface of a permit.io. On the left navigation menu, you will find the first option, that is project management. So inside the project management, you will find two environments. One is the development environment and another one is the production environment. And as you can see a green dot over here, which means your development environment is active. And if you want to switch to the production environment, then there is a option which is like a set as an active environment. So it's simply you can click on this button and your production environment will be active. Along with that, there is a copy secret key. So this is the PDP API key, which I have already mentioned. So you can copy this key and you can start your Docker container based on this key. So there is a separate key for development and there is a separate key for the production. The second option over here is the policy editor. So once you open the policy editor, then here you will find the options to add new role, add new resource, or edit existing resource. So let's say if I click on the edit resources, so here you can see we have already created a JHook blog resource and these are the actions which we have created. So either I can add or remove these actions over here. Secondly, here I can create a new resource as well, and here I can add the roles also. Apart from that, these are the different roles which we have created, that is admin role, copywriter, reviewer, and the writer. And along with that, you can also update the action. So here admin is having all the actions which he can perform. So here you can change it, you can remove it. Similarly, you can assign some new actions to the copywriter. So that is pretty easy from the UI. The third option we have over here is the user management. So here you can see these are the users which we have already created during the initial setup. So what you can do over here, either you can add a new user if you want to add a new user. Secondly, you can create a new tenant. This is a default tenant because we haven't created anything, that's why it is coming under default tenant. And similarly, if you click on any of the existing user, this edit option, then you will find the different options, like you can change the first name, last name, even the email ID, and also the roles. Like for this user, for myself, I have assigned as an admin, so I can be a writer over here also. So also you can change or assign the roles for a particular user into this section. The fourth option over here is the audit log. So here you can see different action which is logged over here and which can be used for debugging and troubleshooting purposes. So if you see over here, this is a delete action which we have called for a user Batman. And if you remember from our setup, the delete action is only assigned to the admin user, not to Batman user. So that's why the decision was red over here. And when it was green, so when we have assigned the action edit to the Batman user, so during that time this was allowed and it was permitted, and that's why you can see the message over here, action was permitted because the user has a reviewer role. So these kind of a log messages you will find over here which can be helpful for the debugging and troubleshooting purposes. I hope you liked the today's session on permit.io, and if you have any question related to the today's session, then please put down into the comment section. And if you are interested into the similar content on DevOps, then please consider subscribing to this channel where I keep on sharing the similar content on a weekly basis. So see you into the next session of our DevOps. Till then, take care and bye bye.